Kuro has officially revealed Qiuyuan's attributes. Let's talk about it. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Okay, so, we now have the official confirmation of what Qiuyuan's weapon is going to be, and what his element is going to be. So, an arrow sword user. Gonna be honest, I think that was probably the most obvious thing under the sun, probably the most logical way that they could have took with him. However, we have to consider that Wuthering Waves is a little silly, and they sometimes give out weapons and elements that we wouldn't normally expect. I remember seeing how many people were surprised about Augusta being an electro unit. Now, I feel like most people are aware that was actually a deliberate decision, and there is some, scientific backing behind that because of how her plasma works. But either way, we do tend to get surprised by what elements they pick sometimes. Though let's be real, in Qiuyuan's case, he was destined to be an arrow unit. Just look at him, the green, how airy he feels. I don't know, I just think he does give off that arrow vibe. As for a sword user, I think that was also quite predictable. If you look at what he's holding there, it's not necessarily a sword, I don't think. And he is carrying that little capsule at the top of it. I remember some people were calling it a fishing rod before, and saying that he's carrying around a Bluetooth speaker, which I thought was really funny, or a camera of some variety, but I do believe that to be his weapon. So, yep, arrow sword user, that was pretty much what everybody was expecting, I feel, and I think it does fit the character very nicely. I'm glad that they went for that. I quite like the arrow element myself, so definitely looking forward to that aspect of him. However, now that we know what his attribute and weapon type is, it's time to think. What do we believe that Qiuyuan is actually going to do? What is his kit actually gonna do? We have literally no information in-game as of now. Usually what happens is that Wuthering Waves will add the echo sets for future characters ahead of time, and then we can kind of start from there and guess what the unit's going to do, but we don't really have that, because more recently, they've been releasing echoes as new characters come out, for those respective characters, and they're usually quite specific sets that only work for that individual unit. I do feel that perhaps that has something to do with Nightmare Nests and the new way that they're organizing 3-piece echoes, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did the same thing for Qiuyuan. Granted, because he's the second half unit, and he's the one that's coming after Galbraina because Galbraina was the first character to get dripped in this lineage of drip marketing for 2.7, I'm not sure if he's going to be given his own dedicated set. I'm not sure how much importance that Kuro is going to put on him. I've seen some people be worried that he's not particularly going to be given a super good kit, or a kit that's all that memorable, because he is, as we all know, a very rare instance of a male character in this game, and I'm sure that Kuro's sales expectations for him are probably on the lower side. I would just have to guess. We obviously don't know. So I don't know how much they're going to give this guy. I don't know how much fanfare they're going to give him, and I don't know what type of kit they're going to give him. I will just say now, I really hope that they don't put him at a disadvantage and give him a kit like Brant. Now, Brant's actual gameplay is amazing. He fits into so many teams, but he is really hard to build. Even if you do have a signature weapon, it's still a nightmare to get all of the stats that he wants and to have an actually good build on Brant, because he can benefit from so many stats. Attack, crit, and he obviously wants plenty of ER, the more the better. It feels like you need energy on basically every piece with that guy, regardless of how you're building him. On a slightly unrelated note, I got into building Kalcharo recently, and he's another character that reminded me about how annoying it is to build energy on characters, because it feels like you need energy on quite a few pieces for him. Pieces that would generally be good on other characters. Yeah, they don't feel as good on Kalcharo, because you generally want at least 1 ER roll on those so that you can get up to 130 ER minimum. Granted, it does help if you do have his S1 and whatnot, but I have S0, so I'm suffering. On a somewhat unrelated note, I'm mostly building him because I finished chapter 27 of PGR not long ago, and he kind of reminds me of Watanabe, and I really like that character, so yeah, that's why I'm building Kalcharo in 2025. Anyways, that aside, you get the idea. If they give him some ridiculous build requirements, people are not going to be super inclined to build him. Like, that is a thing. People aren't going to want to farm really specific echoes for a unit if it's far too frustrating. So please, Kuro, don't make his stat requirements absolutely absurd. I would hope he's somewhat accessible at least. In terms of his role, okay, so I genuinely couldn't tell you if he's gonna have any relation to Galbraina or not. My guess is that because he's right after her, he's gonna end up being the Galbraina support, whatever Galbraina's kit ends up being. However, because he's an arrow unit, and I do feel like these days Wuthering Waves does try and pair characters of similar elements with one another, he might end up being good for Cardathea or Qiuyuan. I'm not sure though. The thing is, I feel like Cardathea's team is basically complete. We could potentially get an upgrade to Air Rover, but I'm not sure, I kinda doubt it. It could happen, especially considering that Kardathi is quite a popular character, and she's a very strong DPS, so upgrading her wouldn't actually be out of the question, but I'm not particularly sure. I would place my bets on Qiuyuan instead, considering that they're both hot Jinzhou men. I feel like people who are fans of Qiuyuan would very much want to pull for Qiuyuan. I know that as someone who likes Qiuyuan a lot myself, I definitely do want to pick up a Qiuyuan, and I do think that he is in more need of a good buffer or a good second Salt teammate, but then again, Iyuno's coming out. And sure, she's the best in slot second Salt teammate for Augusta specifically. She's not necessarily being designed with Qiuyuan in mind, however, she's a generalist good heavy attack buffer, so it's very likely that she's going to end up being his new best in slot. And I do think that Kuro is likely aware of this, so if we already get a new Qiuyuan teammate in 2.6, I have a hard time believing that we're going to be getting another one in 2.7, so that to me suggests that he's likelier to be a Galbraina support of some variety, because sure, while their elements don't match, that doesn't necessarily mean that they absolutely cannot support each other in any way, shape, or form. We have plenty of teams in this game where the support and the DPS have different elements and different weapon types. That happens literally all the time. Just because they're going more in the direction of having matching elements recently doesn't necessarily mean that that's a rule that they have to follow. So that's that. However, consider this. He is a sword user, and we did get some new Battle Pass weapons recently. The new Battle Pass sword, Feather's Edge, provides attack from casting Resonance Liberation, and generally provides quite a lot of Resonance Liberation damage bonus. So this makes me wonder, is Qiuyuan gonna have anything to do with Resonance Liberation damage? My honest guess? Yes, I do think so. I think he's probably going to have something to do with his ult. I would think that that would make sense, considering that we did get the BP weapons recently, and the BP Broadblade ended up being a very good choice for Augusta in particular. So I do think that these new BP weapons were designed around this current batch of characters. So with that in mind, I think that we can potentially expect him to do some damage, because Feather's Edge main stat has crit rate on it. The weapon isn't supportive in any way, shape, or form, which makes me wonder, if he is a support or a second Salt teammate, is he going to support via his outro skill? Now, I have a really hard time believing that they're going to make a main DPS out of him. The main reason for this is because Galbraina was dripped first. I believe that she is the first half character, and with that in mind, I do think that she's likelier to be a main DPS than Qiuyuan. The reason for this is because Kuro usually doesn't put out 2 main DPSs in one patch. The closest we ever got to this was 2.1, but even then, Brant is definitely more of a second Salt teammate, and I wouldn't really say his DPS team became anything of a serious consideration until Lupa came out a couple of patches later. However, that doesn't necessarily mean Kuro can't break the rules. They could make Qiuyuan a main DPS, just so that people who do care about male characters have a new main DPS to use. I wouldn't put that past them either. Considering that we rarely get male releases, they know that the average waifu puller might not be getting him, so they're just going to make him a main DPS so that people such as myself, and perhaps you if you also like Qiuyuan, can enjoy a new male on-fielder. I would hope that he is an on-fielder. That is a big wish of mine. I would be very upset if they ended up relegating him to being an off-fielder. Because man, his design is cinema. I want to look at it as much as humanly possible. He is absolutely beautiful in my opinion. But anyways, that aside, you get the idea. I do think that he's going to do damage in some capacity. And this makes me quite happy, because even if he does end up being a second Salt teammate, I personally expect him to be one that's going to be able to be played as a DPS. Brant and likely Iyuno are characters that are able to do this, despite being designed as second Salt teammates primarily. So even if Qiuyuan does end up being a Galbraina support, I do imagine that much like those two, you're still able to get away with pulling just for him if you really like him, and you can still get away with playing him as a main DPS. I honestly do hope that his sequence nodes focus more on his own capabilities, as opposed to making him a support, but that's just because I want to S6 him, and I really hope that I can make him into a strong main DPS. Or if it is buffs-based, then I hope that they're self-applying buffs, and that they're not all centered around some other main DPS that he could potentially be supporting. So I do personally think that he will be a second Salt teammate. I have a hard time believing that they're gonna make him a main DPS. I don't think that their sales expectation for him is that high, especially considering that Chisa is likely to be the next banner, considering that she wasn't dripped for 2.7. So with that in mind, I don't know if we're going to give him the best kit in the world, but I do hope that they cook with him. I really hope his animations look good. I have faith that he will at least look cool, and I hope his story is well written and all that good stuff. But meta-wise, I don't think he's going to be anything groundbreaking. I don't think that they would make him groundbreaking because He does have a lot of hype and fanfare, but we have to see if it actually carries through. I know that I definitely will be pulling for him, and I will be pulling many copies of him. But I can't speak for everyone else, and I can't speak for his actual release banner numbers. We'll have to see. I am super excited for him. I really, really am, and I do hope that his kit is good. And to be honest, I wouldn't really say that wuwa has any strictly bad characters. I just really hope he doesn't get hit with the Cantarella or Roshia stick and get sentenced into being a niche nothing burger. Please, Kuro, let him be a unit that's able to be a main DPS on its own if you want to. I really would hope for that. And for the love of all that is holy in the Imperator's great divine name, do not make him a negative status unit. I am begging. But those are just my personal thoughts. How about yourself? Do you think that Qiuyuan is going to have any of these qualities, or do you have some of your own ideas? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Hopefully this video was able to feed you some food for thought regarding Qiuyuan's potential abilities. This has been Juice, signing out, and I am going insane waiting for more information on this guy. Kuro, I am begging you, give me more! I need to see more!